Dr. Diana Basinkantar. I am the chair for BCS Coventry branch. Today we've got Jez Nicholson, and Jez will be speaking on OpenStreetMap and the accidental open data anarchist. Jez is CTO of Pororoca, and he builds property risk assessment software. He is an enthusiast of open data, as well as creator of openplax.org. Jez is an occasional conference speaker and ex-director of the OpenStreetMap UK Local Chapter. You are welcome, Jez. So I'll hand over to you now, Jez.
There's still a rush for people.
Yeah. Okay.
The last minute.
I'll spotlight you.
Come on, get in. Right. Okay. So, ready to go then. Okay. So.
Yes, the floor is yours.
Welcome everybody. I am going to talk to you about OpenStreetMap and my unusual title of Accidental Open Data Anarchist. So this talk came about from a short online conversation I had with one of my fellow OpenStreetMappers. So I'd been in a meeting, and it was in one of these non-government organizations. I won't say which one. And they called people who want to make data freely and openly available, that's government data, open data anarchists. And I thought, oh, hang on, that's me. And what's so bad about it anyway? So, and they were saying it like it was a terrible thing. But so because some people think that sort of essential services like water supply or roads, basic infrastructure, and you should be able to own those collectively, be available to all. And I've come to believe that some data, particularly government data, is really a public good, and it should be free and available to us in a similar way. In the UK, we've got, we've somewhat sensibly created these sort of halfway houses, which is things like the Ordnance Survey. They have to look after their own budget, and maybe, or also someone like the Environment Agency. Their primary job isn't like making data. Their primary job is looking after rivers and flooding. So that makes sense that they should publish it. But map data doesn't get published because the Ordnance Survey really rely on that for funding as well. So I believe that all this data that's government connected, we've already paid for it, and it should be allowed for us to all use. So firstly, as a citizen, I want to be able to use that data, maybe even to hold that organization to account. So you could look at Environment Agency data and see if they're doing their job over pollution in the rivers. And with my capitalist head on, I think that there's sections of government, they should be building other stuff with it, but it's not really their job. They should make it available so that businesses are spurred on to do extra stuff on top. So that's partly where the anarchist side came out. But then secondly, if you've ever been a member of a club or a sports team or a voluntary organization where the decisions aren't top down, but they're sort of made for general consent, dare say like the BCS. So maybe there's a little bit of anarchism in there already. So this talk is about something astounding that has grown out of apparent chaos. So, like all good talks, I'm going to start from the end and work backwards. This is what I'd like you to do at the end of it. Firstly, know that we exist and know that it's a thing. But secondly, have a real think about data and really consider where it's coming from and what it is. I think we quite often just take data and information and use it, and we don't really know about it. And hopefully that will come out from this talk. I want you to make some data, and I want you to be slightly chaotic. And finally, can you ask a question at the end, please? But let's go. So firstly, let me tell you a story. So one evening in 1935, a woman gets lost in London Belgravia. She says that she was on her way to a party, but another story is she was on the way to paint a portrait. So it's been a bit sort of muddled over the years. But there's one thing that's definitely true. Phyllis Pearsall is lost, mainly because she set out to walk around the back streets of London using a 1919 Ordnance Survey map, which is a bit stupid, really, because it's a large scale and it doesn't have all the roads named. So I don't know how she thought that would work, but apparently that was how she got around, which is a bit of an irony because her father owned a map making business. And she had a brainwave. She decided to walk every street in London, taking notes about it, and compile a street index. And that street index turned out to be the A to Z of London. If we zip forward quite a few years to 2004, and there was a University College London student called Steve Coast. His project was he wanted to draw maps with computers. And it seemed like, well, you could just get hold of some data. The Ordnance Survey's got plenty. But then he found out how much it would cost him. It was going, at that time, it was in the thousands of pounds. So that was a non-starter. So he'd been playing with handheld GPS receivers, and that gave him an idea. Just like his predecessor, Phyllis Pearsall, he decided to walk the streets of London, but this time using the GPS to collect tracks, because you can record where you've been with it and get it out afterwards. Now, if anyone's used Strava, which is the fitness tracking app, then it won't seem very revolutionary, but at the time it was. Nobody was doing this. So Steve walks up every street in the area and he starts to make a little skeleton of a map. The lines are going to follow where he's walking, so they're going to be a bit wobbly. But that's fine. This is going to be a guide, and he's going to use it afterwards to do some make it more topological. So it's about finding where the key turning points of the roads are and where it changes direction. So if we look on the left-hand side of the screen, there's a trace which is actually that's near where I live, actually, down in Brighton, nowhere near Coventry. That is the beginning of the trace of around the Preston Park and down the road areas nearby. So we can turn this into a topology by making a simple thing with points, lines, and polygons. So if you think of a point, we often talk in mapping at the moment about points of interest. So this can be a thing like a pub or a shop, just a straight point location. And then a road is just a series of connected points. And then if you want to have like the outline of a building or the perimeter of a park or something like that, then the line just has to connect back on itself. So very quickly, he's made a topology database, super simple. And then he's made a scheme to add attributes to each of those things you just created. So you can say what they are. So you can say that's a park, that's a road, that's a pub, whatever. So in the language of OpenStreetMap, we call those nodes, ways, and areas. He's working away, and his map is starting to appear. It grows, right. Now, I spoke about those, giving those points attributes. It may not feel like it, but this is sort of where the anarchy starts. Because normally what you do if you were creating a new database, or especially if you were creating a map, you would sit down with a group of subject matter experts and you would devise a taxonomy. So you decide what things are going to be in, and how are you going to represent them on the map, what symbols you use. So when you have an ordnance survey map, you've got the key, and it has things like places of worship, heliports. I don't know how many heliports we have these days. Or maybe they have standard symbols like PH, which is for public house. They've decided what colours things should be. What colour roads? And so what they've done really is they've predetermined what they intend to collect, and this gives their surveyors a good chance of getting good coverage, finding everything. But what it does is it implicitly dictates what you can't include as well as what you can include, because you can only put in things which are on the key. Steve started in a different place. He started by making it so it'd be super flexible, and he used database format, which is on the right-hand side, which is the key value pair. So when you store it in a database, you can have basically any value you like in the key and any value you like in the value. So in the attribute value. You can make up any keys you like then. Doesn't mean that people are going to follow them and do anything with them. But it does mean that the model can grow over time and you can add to it. Particularly, the users themselves can add to it. So this is like flipping it on its head, rather than having a top-down structure where someone up top says, this is all you can do. We have a thing where you can make up anything, and you can add to it. And yes, as Stephen says in the chat, it's all very well until you have 967 different tags for the same thing. But if you're encouraged to have a look and to see what other people have done already before you decide to make up your own thing, then you're much better off using something that somebody's already done to represent it. Or if you felt that they got it wrong, then you can have a discussion with them and say, well, I need to extend this and make it better. So maybe we could do it this way instead. So it's not set in stone, and it's not, it's flexible, but there's good and bad points. The other thing is, most of the time you want it to come out on the main view of the data, which is on the main website. So if you start using tags which are completely different to everyone else's, then your things won't appear. And it's sort of a bit of an encouragement to use the ones that other people do. But all of this is a bit crazy. Putting it in charge of the data collectors seems like it's going to be chaos and end in absolute disaster, which is what I thought when I heard about it in 2007 or so. I thought it would never work. But if I go over now, the horrible words, live demo, I go over to, so here's my area, park. We have all these things in detail. If I select one of these things, I can pick out, there's benches, there's tennis courts. We could go to, God, here's a place I've got prepared earlier. It's somewhere in Coventry. So I can see from this that 3 of these semi-detached houses have been mapped by somebody as one shape. So if I wanted to remap that myself, I can go in, I can see got some other data here, some cadastral parcels to line them up. Process of editing is about getting the map lined up. So you can see here, these 3 buildings are done as one. Normally we'd have those as semi-detached. So for a user to go and edit, I can go in there. Looks like they've got an extension out the back. Both Sherlock Road, Coventry. Let's see what the numbers were. That was 55 and 57. So the road goes around 51, 52, 55. That's 57. Right, there, and that is done. That is an edit to the live map. I go back to here, it hasn't appeared yet, and I won't expect it to appear for another few minutes at least, but it could be live and visible within, I mean, like 5 minutes. So the speed of turnaround for seeing something that's wrong or needs adding to and actually doing something about it can be like almost instant. Whereas I imagine if you wanted to change your building on the Ordnance Survey map, it will be an awful lot longer. Okay, so that is in action. Result of Steve's work and other people, obviously not just him, is this huge map of the world. I suppose I should show you that actually, sorry. If I zoom out from the center of the world to keep going, keep going, and keep going, and keep going. I can go anywhere in the world. I hope I'm talking the truth here. Well, let's have a look at North Korea. It's somewhere that will be not mapped as much, I would imagine. But there's even buildings in North Korea. So it is a huge thing now. It's a worldwide map, which, coming from somebody starting by walking around with a GPS receiver, is absolutely bananas, as far as I'm concerned. Crazy. So that was sort of the result of some design decisions and some crazy work. All this stuff makes me think because, as we've seen already, like the naming of tags and stuff starts making you think about data and where we got it from in the first place, and how it even works. Because if we're going to be using this stuff, we need to understand it and not just use it blindly. So I've been reading this book by a professor from the University of Carolina, Melanie Feinberg. This is quite an approachable but detailed book all about data and where it comes from. And her experiences were brought to mind some of the stuff that I found with OpenStreetMap. You think that you're using the same measurement tools as everybody else, but maybe you're not. So her example was weighing yourself on a set of scales. So your scales that you have in your bathroom are not going to be the same as is in the doctor's office or in the gym. There are various things like how many clothes you have on when you weigh yourself and what time of day it is. So this comes out with an example I heard about for the Environment Agency. So when there's been a big flood, how they find out where the boundary was, how far it flooded. So what they used to do is they wait for the tide water or flood water to go back, and they would see where there was a little tide line of rubbish was left. And what they found, so they did a similar thing of walking around with a GPS recorder to go and plot it. But they found that they had to make sure that people were holding the GPS in the correct hand. If you have it in the hand that is nearest to the flood line, then that would be different from if you had it in your left hand, which was further away from the flood line by about a couple of feet, or if you have your arms wide apart. So that made me think as well already about the accuracy of stuff that you're talking about. And then there's lots of things in there about what you choose to record, because things like numbers and things that are measurable are very good, but maybe things which are subjective are harder to record about it. And what we found generally is some ways that you think about things in the UK are not the same when you go to other countries. A good example is main roads. So a main road in the UK is sort of fairly obvious to find because it's given a road number and a road type. But if you go abroad, or maybe to Saharan subcontinent or something like that, the conditions of a road might be very, very different to what you would expect here. How do you match those up? How do you make that work so that your main road and their main road can be tagged as similar things? So a lot of this is comes out when you do some actual mapping yourself, and you start to investigate it and find out that there's an awful lot of issues with it. It's certainly not straightforward, and it gets complicated. So what's come out of this is a set of good practice to follow, and this is how we generally go about our mapping when we're doing open mapping. Is we do work which should be verifiable by somebody else. It's all about mapping what you can actually see and what is physically there, and trying not to interpret too much, and especially not sort of mapping things that used to be there. But then there's issues with that. So say if you're mapping where a railway used to be, a rail line, it may well be a footpath now, or there may be remnants of railway left there. And it's like, is it still a railway line, or is it a form of railway line? So we also avoid mapping temporary features and events. So my example there is, say, the Glastonbury Festival. So for a short amount of the year, there's a Glastonbury, I think it was one of the 4th biggest cities in the UK, just for a short period of time. So we don't map that sort of thing, but I mean, you could. What if it's a food market that only appears on Friday? There's difficulty with that. Then I talked earlier about you want to choose tags which will make it come out on the map. It can be a bit tempting to try to subvert some tags if they don't quite work, because you want the thing to display right. But what we're building is a sort of a universal database, and the map that I showed you on the first page, on the live demo was only one example of an output. There's many other ways to do it. What we try to do is we build over time. We try to learn from others. There's lots of information pages about what other people have done and how they think of it. And we try not to chop out what other people have done, because there may have been other things that you didn't realize were going on, and that's why it was like it is. But I shall very arrogantly quote myself, and I think the only way to really understand data is to go and make some yourself. And I would say that OpenStreetMap is the ideal thing to do to really get in there quickly, do something, and probably find some problems very, very quickly. So we got this great big database, lots of data all about the world. And I showed you the one map, which is on the main website. But there's many other ways of skinning this cat. So this is a nice example. This is a appropriately named project called Pretty Maps. You could output something that would probably go on a poster, or you could frame that and put it on a wall. It's still a map. It's still the same information, but it's displayed differently. We then got some different views, which are things like what if you look at it from a cycling perspective? So cyclists are going to want to have different things to what normal people have, other people have. Another view is the open infrastructure map. We were looking at this earlier. I'm going to go over to this one live. So here is Rampion Wind Farm. This is just off the coast of Brighton. So I could probably see this from my house if I went out my front door. Oops, sorry. If I zoom in, we got it down to every single turbine that's in there. And this particular view of the world is all about power lines and about energy. So I can see from this is the main cable that links up Rampion Wind Farm to the grid, and the grid connection is up here in a place called Bolney. And I happen to know that because it's a really big electrical cable, they had to bury it underground. And you don't really want that going under your house. So they had to find a gap. And this is the gap that they had between Worthing and Lancing. And then it goes up through the farmland, meanders. And that's where it goes up and connects to the national grid. Other views of the data, we can jump in and we could, there's my park again, same data, different view. I quite like doing this one where it grows houses behind it. We got a 3D view of near my house and down the park. I particularly chose this park because I plotted quite a few of those places that are in it. Final view I'll show you is it's still a map, but it's a data service. So it's a routing service And if I wanted to cycle from Coventry to Brighton, here is its route that it's given me. And I'm going to zoom in around here. It very sensibly doesn't take me down the main road. It decides to pick some little back roads to route me down rather than making me cycle on the A23, which would be quite unpleasant. So it does it very well. So that's at least 4, 5 different versions of the same data, but rendered in a different way. And we're building a database that manages to do all of them, which is quite hard, really. Behind all this is people. Steve didn't do it all by himself. He didn't organize a way of doing it, though. He didn't set up a chief organization which would tell everybody what to do. He just let it sort of grow by itself. So this is sort of quite historical, goes back to 2007, I think. How people used to, or how the map was first built was people got together to have mapping parties over weekends. They would literally take the rough map in the top right corner, divide it up. That was called the pie, and you would take a slice of pie and you would go and map your little area. So it's quite a sort of groundbreaking. It's almost like here be dragons, that there's nothing there at the moment, and people will just go in and find it. So when you're self-organizing, it's slightly chaotic. So they picked very early on an idea that when I made that change to the map, I had to put my reason in. That's public, and somebody could challenge that. They could write comments back to me, have a little conversation. So do that in public to encourage a bit of checking, a bit of QA. We got a ton of forums and mailing lists, and if you like having an argument, this is the place to go, because we can have many deep discussions over what things actually mean, and you suddenly learn the difference between a zebra crossing and the black and white stripy thing that's in Tesco's car park, because they're not technically the same thing, as one is legal and one has legal requirements and one doesn't. To me, I think they're the same thing. It's where I can cross. But to another user, if they're having to follow like proper legal stuff, then it matters to them. All of this is really down to the perspective of the people who are collecting the data. So the original and possibly best, most accurate are the Ordnance Survey, who I jokingly say were set up to hunt Jacobites. Part of their original purpose, or maybe their full original purpose, was because they were having trouble with the Scots, and they were able to go and hide in little valleys and things and get away from our troops. So they were commissioned to go and map Scotland and make it so there was no hiding place, which is sort of interesting. Their main purpose now probably is helping us to construct buildings and roads and things like that. So they've got to be super accurate about where everything is. But what they can't be is they can't be as fast and flexible as something like OpenStreetMap can. Someone like Google Maps, they grew quite quickly, but the way they collect stuff, or the way they originally collected stuff, was with their lovely mapping cars. So I would say that Google Maps is really for car drivers. So you may know where that park is, but it's more telling you how to drive past it as fast as you can, rather than what facilities are in it. Whereas I would say the perspective of the surveyors for OpenStreetMap are pedestrians, and that it's more aimed at sort of citizen science rather than government led. So on OpenStreetMap, we have an awful lot of things like little footpaths and all the ways to get to different places around the back, and all the everything that's in a playground or in a park, or lots of the detail that isn't there with other map providers. So if you've got something like, so one of the things I love is, well, Google tells us about the CERN giant, and OpenStreetMap has him drawn in detail. I had to be very careful with my label placing, but that's the sort of obsessive thing that our mappers get up to. We also had things like, here's the Ordnance Survey boasting about the fact they're about to put the Spurs stadium in, and we had it in probably whilst it was being built, let alone afterwards. But there's no point making stuff if people don't actually use it. So I would say that OpenStreetMap is probably the most used unknown database that you'll come across. I mean, quite a lot of you will know about OpenStreetMap, so maybe preaching to the converted, but if you don't, you'll find that your parcel delivery companies are using it. It might be used for your sat nav. Lots of things are getting on there, and I've got a picture of a rhino in there because I met some people from the British Army, and they are helping with rhino conservation in Kenya, and they use OpenStreetMap because it's international and available. Now, a big day for OpenStreetMap, probably more for Haiti, was 12th of January 2010. This is when a magnitude 7 earthquake struck. The epicenter was about 25 kilometers to the west of Port-au-Prince, which is the capital. And then they had, by 12 days later, 24th of January, there'd been at least 52 aftershocks measuring 4.5 or greater. The Haiti government estimated that 250,000 residences and 30,000 commercial buildings had collapsed or were severely damaged. The problem here was when crisis responders wanted to move in and help, there weren't very many maps of Haiti. unsurprisingly, the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere have been totally left out of any commercial mapping, and all that was available of Port-au-Prince was a shaded outline of the city. There wasn't even any roads. So there was a mass scramble to try to get information so that people knew where to do their work. Firstly, there were some maps which were released by the CIA, because they do have some maps. And then secondly, the UN managed to get some satellite data released to the public. Then what happened was a big push by people on OpenStreetMap, various volunteers, and there were student parties and things doing it, mapping in detail the area of Port-au-Prince, and it ended up being used by the assistance agencies for humanitarian aid. This has now led to an NGO being set up, humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, HOT, and they now work around the globe, helping communities to map their own areas. I mean, firstly, in advance of disasters happening rather than straight afterwards, or just to build a resource for countries to own their own mapping. So that's really given OpenStreetMap a really much larger purpose than it originally had, which was just a university project. So let's have a look. 3 minutes to I've done some projects in the UK. So the first one was with helping a project that worked with Falkirk Council. They wanted to create a GIS system of all their services in libraries and what could be offered. So the company Thinkware, who were doing the project with them, approached us and talked to us. He said, well, why don't you use OpenStreetMap as the database behind it? Then if the project is discontinued later on or isn't used, then data is still live and it's still built up a better view for everybody. And then we've also been working more recently with the National Trust, more helping them to plan this out rather than doing it. They've got a team that are doing this. But because their National Trust properties are behind closed gates, they aren't necessarily mapped out fully. So they are training their rangers on all of their sites to how to map. They've got a sort of common guide to how paths and things should be mapped and tagged in their properties, and they've rolled this out across the UK. So we will now have much better mapping of National Trust properties. So that brings me really to my conclusion, that anarchy doesn't necessarily mean destruction. It can mean more sort of disruption, or maybe trying to do something in a different way, rather than doing it as a hierarchy and rules. It's more a chaotic way, but if the results are good, then the chaos may be worth it. I think that all of you should go out and have a go with mapping and using OpenStreetMap and trying to find places that might be missed in your local area or maybe incorrect. If your area is perfectly done, then there is a group called Missing Maps who do a session once, I think it's once a month or once every 2 months online, and they will be mapping places like Kenya, Uganda, places that need assistance with their mapping. So that's a very worthwhile cause to do. So I would like you to go out, embrace chaos, and ask me a question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jez. Very insightful for me. Any questions for Jez, please?
Does everybody have to be left-handed so they can hold the tracker in their right hand and writing it with their left hand?
They can be left-handed, but they have to walk anti-clockwise if they hold it in their left hand.
Yeah, but the diagram you showed, he was holding it in his right hand and writing on it with his left hand.
Oh,
Because being left-handed, I picked up on that straight away. So.
oh right. Well, in OpenStreetMap, it doesn't matter so much because you're using that as a rough guide. We also have a lot of aerial photography that's been donated, so that can be used as well to see where like the key points are. Sorry, I thought you were talking about the Environment Agency.
I was talking about Steve, what's his name, right near the beginning.
Steve Coast, yes. But even using aerial photography is that there's a lot of fudging that goes on because even if it's shot from a plane, some of it will be at an angle, not straight down.
The other thing is, can I use my phone as a tracking device, or do I have to have one of them yellow things?
No, you would be able to use, or you should be able to use your phone as a tracking device. You can also, because there's a lot of things, because the aerial photography is available as well, you can do some of it from home. So you don't have to get out and about. But I think it's always preferable to be able to get out and about and see stuff. There's also a number of sort of mobile phone apps available. So you don't necessarily have to do pure mapping. You can go through, there's an app called Street Complete, which will do things like ask you questions about a bus stop that you're walking by, or some houses. It'll ask you like, can you see the house number? Because we haven't got it. So it can be a lower barrier to entry. You don't have to be like super great plotting everything from scratch.
Right, so are those apps available somewhere? Do we go on the OpenStreetMap website? Does it invite us to use
Yes. There is, I can put some names in.
Sorry to hog all the questions. If anybody else has got a question, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, I think Stephen has put something in the chat. You want to say it out yourself, Stephen, or do you want me to read it?
I can see that. So that was similar to the question that John just said there. It was like, do I need to use a full-on GPS receiver? You don't. If you wanted to do something like recording street level photography, like Google Street View, there is a thing for that as well. It's called Mapillary. So you could buy a really nice camera, 3D camera, and walk around with it and record all your traces, but also record all of you walking down the street. So there's stacks of things. Right. So there's a question, how is OpenStreetMap related to Mapbox and Here Maps? Mapbox presents OpenStreetMap data, but they have made a system for making for map software, so that it works a lot faster. It's got vector tiles, which is the same as when you use Google Maps and you zoom in and out, and it draws itself really quickly. And Here Maps, I can't remember. They were using a combination of their own mapping data and OpenStreetMap blurred together. But I think they might now be using a new thing that's come from I can't remember the name. It's a thing called Overture Maps. They are there's a it's almost like a sort of vetted OpenStreetMap. They check. They run some checks on it to make sure nothing's gone awry on it, and then they are giving sort of unique reference numbers for every object, and then companies will be able to connect their data to those reference numbers and be able to merge the two bits of data together.
Leo seems to have asked, is Maply for OSM the official app in the Play Store?
Oh, no, I don't actually know Maply, I'm afraid. So I wouldn't say. I mean, the truth is there is no official app. This is part of the chaos. It's there are a number of editors available. I've got a list there. There's 3: Street Complete, Every Door, Vespucci. But people make them, and they all use the same API basically to talk to the back end, but they work in different ways. All right, there's a question from John about security issues with infrastructure items. There is and there aren't. I had this when I went to the open day for when they started the Rampion wind farm, and I asked them whether I could have the GIS files about where all the wind turbines were, and they weren't sure because of security. And I was like, but they're there, I can see them. So if aerial photographs are available, not that much is secure anymore. I have had with someone like the Environment Agency, sometimes they obscure where reservoirs are. But again, it's quite easy to work out where a reservoir is if you really wanted to. So I don't think it's a security issue.
I discovered accidentally a house on Google Street Maps that may or may not be there. When I was working on ULEZ, I was looking for somewhere just inside the zone and somewhere just outside. And there was this house just outside. I could see it in one view, but when I drove the car past it on the map, it disappeared.
Right.
Ooh, that's interesting. Ask me no questions, I'll tell you no lies. Yeah, sorry to everybody.
All right. No, that's fine. Any more questions? Any last questions? All right. So thank you very much, Jez. We appreciate Jez with a round of applause, please. Thank you. We really appreciate it.
Everyone's asked if you wanted to start contributing and add in missing features, where would be the best place to start?
Probably at the OpenStreetMap.org website is where you sign up. There's also the OSM Wiki. Ding, 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 ding. So the OpenStreetMap Wiki has there it is, beginner's guide. And the other thing I said was Missing Maps London. I think that's their one. Missing Maps, they're doing the maps abroad, but it's online, and they have training sessions as well. So you can be completely starting from scratch, or you can be more experienced. And there are different streams going on in the Zoom rooms. So I very much advise going on to one of those.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, thanks.
Right.
People saying thank you and disappearing.
Right. Thank you very much, Jez, and thank you everyone for attending this. Our next meeting will be our AGM, that is on next week, actually, next week, Wednesday the 23rd at 6:30. And we invite as many people as possible to come. We need volunteers for the committee, and there are roles available in there. Or if you don't want to take a specific role, you are welcome to just be a member of the committee. You'll be appreciated for your contributions. And thank you, everyone. Have a lovely evening. Goodbye.